Pleasure now to have joining us author, really fascinating book, kind of a follow-up to his previous book, which was a great success, called No Impact Man. We're joined today by Colin Beavan. This is called How to Be Alive, a guide to the kind of happiness that helps the world. He joined us by telephone today. Colin, good to talk with you. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, and thanks for having me.
You're up in Brooklyn, I understand, right?
I am. I live in Brooklyn, New York.
I was born there, didn't live there, but I grew up on Long Island, so it's a great place to be. Brooklyn.
Ah, thanks. Good.
Well, I had a chance to read through the book, and first of all, you've kind of led an interesting life on this journey to find, I guess, your happiness in life. So for the previous book, which I mentioned, No Impact Man, that was kind of your story of kind of giving up a lot of things just to go out on your own and find your own path, right? Different way?
Yeah. So my last book, No Impact Man, was about the fact that I was worried about the world. I was worried about what we were doing to get our fossil fuels, which, at that time meant the Iraq and Afghanistan war, and I was worried about what happened when we burned them, which manifested in college students walking around my neighborhood in shorts and T-shirts in the middle of January when it should have been 20 degrees, and this feeling that we were really harming our habitat, right? And at the same time, not feeling like people were as happy as they could be, so we were wrecking the place and not having a party doing it. People working 10, 12, 14-hour days in jobs that they didn't really believe in, not living in, not spending enough time with the people that they loved, not using the talents that they cared about, and not feeling as though they were actually being of service to the world. So, No Impact Man that year was about my living as environmentally as possible to kind of unpack all the consumerist rat race stuff in my life and ask myself, what really matters in life. And when I did that book, as I pursued that, and in the aftermath, I ended up meeting thousands of what I call life questers, that's my word, and I use it to mean people who are questing after a way of life that's both good for them and good for the world. And that's what How to Be Alive is about. It's partly about these life questers that I met, and it's about how each of us can search for our own life that's good for us and good for the world.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I like that word, the term life questers. So you coined that. That's a good one. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, and the people that you meet who deserve that title are all really neat people. They're people who are learning to think for themselves and live according to their own values. And it may be a young farmer who's running a local farm. It might be a young person who's started a community for other people to live. It could be an elderly neighbor who's just realized that one way to deal with her own loneliness is to help other people in the neighborhood by helping take care of their kids. Basically, life questions are just people who have found a way of life that makes themselves happy, not at the expense of the world, but by doing good by the world.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, in this crazy economy we have now, whether by choice or whether by circumstance, find themselves in a position they have to find maybe a different way to live economically, and I guess that kind of forces you to do what you did, right? Just kind of find your own path to be happy, not necessarily the job you had before, maybe a different way or a different lifestyle, right?
Well, that's kind of why the book is called How to Be Alive, because, we used to have this idea of basically you went to college and you just borrowed as much money as you needed to, regardless of how much debt you would be in, because then you would get this great corporate job that would give you health care and retirement benefits, and then you could afford a big mortgage on a big house, and you would be safe, and you'd also have some feeling that somehow you were keeping the wheels of industry turning and contributing to the world. And now so many, the world's really changing, and so many of us feel, first of all, we can't get those corporate jobs anymore because so many of us are freelancers, so we don't get the health care like we used to, and that's breaking down. And even if you do make a success at it, you get to feel like you're doing it at the expense of the world. So How to Be Alive, part of the reason for that title is because in these changing times, it's not really clear how to really be alive anymore. It's not really clear how to live a good life anymore. And so it's called How to Be Alive partly for that reason you raised, and it's also called How to Be Alive because what the book posits is that the only real way to figure out how to live your life now, since there's no directions to follow, is return to yourself and your own values, to really be alive to yourself, to be alive in that way too.
Yeah, I guess in some ways, turmoil is never fun, but in some ways, I guess it's good because it's forced people, like you said, to really get down to the core of what you want to do to make you happy. You're not following that path where maybe our parents or grandparents did, where you're, like you said, you're in one job for 40 years. That doesn't exist for probably 99% of the people in the world anymore, or at least in America.
That's right, and the thing about it is when it did exist, it was too enticing to not, it was when you could get it, it was too big a risk to decide to go off on your own path and to go by the beat of your drummer. So the kind of, the suffering that's caused by the changes in the world are not exciting. But what is exciting is that for those of us who always wanted to go off on a different path, now being on a different path is kind of an advantage.
You would kind of break it down in different categories in the book. Eat how you want to live. I thought that was kind of interesting. That's kind of changed a lot in the last few years. People deciding maybe they want to be vegetarian or vegan or just eat a little differently. So you talk about that in the book.
Right. So what I say is, here we are talking about living according to our own values. And when people hear that, they think, oh, you're telling me to change my career. But, oh, my God, that's like such a big project. I can't possibly do that. And then we go back to stopping and not changing anything. So what I do in the first part of the book is talk about, well, let's not look at career right now. Let's look at some of the smaller relationships we have with the world, like through our food or how we transport ourselves or whether or not we're civically engaged and part of the democratic process. Let's look at those smaller relationships first. And so one of those relationships is with food, and the chapter's called Eat How You Want to Live. And the question really, again, is, am I eating in a way that's in line with my values? And so am I eating food that's healthy for me? Am I eating food that's produced in such a way that it doesn't harm the world? Am I actually spending my time eating in community with other people, or am I going through the drive-thru and eating in my car? And it talks about easy steps that you can begin to take. Like, instead of don't carry a power bar around, carry a carrot or an apple around. That's just an easy first step. Like, buy an apple. When you go to the store today for your snack, buy an apple instead of a candy bar. Or prepare your food, and when you bring it to work, bring enough to share a little something with a colleague. And instead of, like, scoffing it down and shoving it down your neck while you're working, pull your chair over to a colleague's desk and at least spend 15 minutes eating together in community. So the idea is that in these small ways, we get to experience living according to our values, and then learning to trust that gives us a chance to actually trust our values and expand into bigger areas of our life.
Yeah, good advice. Do you find, kind of your research, Colin, doing the book, maybe people college age or maybe 25, 30 and under are more adapted to this type of lifestyle? I guess the older people probably aren't, right? They never are. Well, we never are.
Well, I mean, to be fair, what happens as we get older is that suddenly we have a mortgage payment. Suddenly we have, we commit ourselves. This is why it's really important when we're young to try to begin by building a life according to our values, because as we get older, we've built a life that isn't quite in sync with who we are, and find we're committed to it, and it's hard to undo. But having said that, and so in some ways, yes, it's easier for young people to start. But having said that, there's all of us, no matter what situation we find ourselves in, are able to begin living more in line with our values. You may work in a job that you hate, for example, but you may care about the racial inequality that we're all learning more about in our country. And so you can go to your employer and say, hey, I'd like to help develop a hiring policy that's more accessible, where we don't just hire from friends of friends anymore. We actually advertise our jobs so that anybody with the skills and the talents we need can become aware of those jobs, regardless of race background, right? So no matter what situation we find ourselves in, we can actually use our ingenuity to make it more meaningful and be more of service to the world.
Well, the name of the book is How to Be Alive, a guide to the kind of happiness that helps the world. We've been talking with Colin Beavan today. Colin, give out your website, and people can get more information on the book if they like.
Sure. Well, first you can get the book How to Be Alive at any good bookseller, and you can find out more at www.colinbeavan.com. It's COLINBEAVAN.com. And if there's on the menu there's a place called Offerings, and you can get a free chapter from the book there, too.
Great. Colin, pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully we can do it again. Thanks for joining me.
It was great to talk to you, too.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or Doug Miles Media.